Try to read my notes here a little bit. The section, this is our 40th year, and that's a pretty good thing, I think, for a volunteer organization as we are. You got a board of directors that looks to do the best they can for you. They can only do what they're doing with your input. As this is my 7th year at the end of 7 years of being on the board, what I can tell you is over time, we don't get a lot of input from you guys about what you want to do, what you need us to do, and what you want. Catch a lot of flack when we do stuff you don't like, but the positive things, the things we can do to build the organization, to grow it, we had a lot of that in the early days. Because when we got started, what were we? We were competitor to NACD, and as an instructor in those early days, I can tell you one of the reasons that NACD said, we will never teach surveying. We're here to teach people how to cave dive, but we're not going to teach them how to explore and survey. One of the first things that the nsscds did when we came out and formed was Czech believed that surveying should be part of every cave diving basic training. There are only 2 levels, cavern and cave. There were none of the intermediate stuff. And someplace along in the dives that you made as you became a cave diver, you learned how to at least do a little bit of a survey, and it taught you how to save yourself, if nothing else. You had some idea of the cave and what it was. Permanent line started 400 or 500 feet back, and it wasn't, as I would call a commercial cave or a tourist cave, so to speak. When we have gold lines lining the cave, what do? We jump in, we get on the goal line, and we go as far as we think we can go, turn around and come back. We haven't learned the cave. Complacency. I think Ed's talk goes so far beyond that it's hard to imagine what it means. The section formed primarily because of the efforts of 2 people, Chuck Exley and Forrest Wilson. Forrest, stand up, please. I'd like to give Forrest a hand. We recognized in those days that there was more, and we all jumped on board with the conservation, with the exploration, and all the other efforts that went on, and we were trying to preserve life. We didn't want to see people die. We thought that, well, if we can train them, we'll see them, they'll get their training, and then they'll go on to lead safe lives in cave diving. In the early days, what were the number of the fatalities? The fatalities were caused by people that had no cave training at all. And then, if you look at the statistics as of late, with a few exceptions, it's the same way. People they've learned to cave dive, they've become complacent, and now it's trained cave divers that have become the statistics. We need to stop that trend so that the only statistic out there might be the occasional person that is not trained to go someplace that they don't belong. Back to the board of directors for a second. The Rotary, I'm not a Rotarian, but they have a saying, or their motto, or mantra as you wish, is service before self. And I would like to encourage all boards of directors and the membership at large to think about service to the organization before you put your own personal goals in that process. With respect to training, there are 85,500 plus flight instructors in the United States. That means there are 85,500 plus ways to learn to fly. We have a pretty good safety record, but back to complacency, there are about one airplane goes down about every 5 days because they mismanage their fuel. So you would think that after nearly 100 years of pilots, and we know that the motors don't run without fuel, that would not be a problem. It's complacency. But there is one thing that's different. With these 85,000 plus flight instructors, what do they have to do at the end of it? If I train somebody to learn to fly, I've trained them to learn to fly, but before they get their private pilot certificate, they go before an examiner, either an FAA examiner or a designated FAA examiner, and they take a flight test for all the ratings, whether private, instrument, commercial, instructor. And as a result, there is a standardizing factor that makes it so everyone that learns to fly, at least at one point in time, they've achieved their certificate. And that certificate, they'll be told often enough, this is your certificate as you're beginning to learn. As we train our cave divers and they become certified, they need to understand that that training is just the beginning of their learning process. And those that have had, as Michelangelo will say, his learning process got really hammered in bad in Cozumel. But that was the beginning of the learning process that he's trying to convey to us. We need to continue this learning and not have mistakes. Conservation, a little bit. Conservation is an interesting thing. When we go into a cave and we exhale our carbon dioxide and surplus oxygen into the cave, is that conservation? It can be argued yes and no. Conservation, the white room, just a show of hands in devil's eye, who's been into the white room? How white is it really? It's pretty yellow. I found the white room. I was the first guy in there, and it was crystalline white. It was, if you take a piece of limestone and you break it open, what color is it? It is just absolutely bright white. But you leave that limestone, expose it to the oxygen and the elements for a few days, and it's turned yellow. Well, our exhaust gases in that space, because there is no water exchange out of the white room, has changed the water chemistry and has changed the effects of it. Our bubbles hit the ceiling. What does that cause? The erosion of the ceiling. So every time we dive open circuit scuba in a cave, we're altering the water chemistry, we alter the mechanics of the system, and it can be said, well, how do we get there without doing that? Well, the rebreather people here know that we don't have bubbles, and so we help preserve that. So, and there are people, well, rebreathers are safe or they're not anyway. For conservation purposes, rebreathers serve that purpose. We don't change the water chemistry, and we don't cause ceiling erosion. You mismanage your buoyancy either way or the other, no matter open or closed circuit, and you cause damage. Probably the two more points. The springs in the water level. The springs here in Tallahassee, Florida, everywhere. What do we see when we drive along the road? How many of you saw the big spray fields running where the farmers are irrigating their crops driving here last few days? A lot of you. Where's that water coming from? They're pumping it out of the ground. 10-inch wells, 12-inch wells, to hundreds of millions of gallons per farm per year. What do you think that does to our water, to our aquifer? It lowers it, reduces our spring pressure. And places like Little River used to be nice and white and clean. Little River's now a dark place. It's beginning to look like Manatee Springs to me. But the chemistry in the water's changing by what's happening on the top side. We need to go out, if you see an opportunity to work with a group, be proactive in trying to help prevent things, you can. A few years back, Derry built a spray field right over the top of the cathedral Falmouth Spring system. We lobbied, we activated it. There was everything. The Department of Environmental Protection, under the, I guess they had pressure from the Dairy Farmers Coalition, they granted permission. So under a known conduit in the state, they were given permission to put up a spray field, pump roughly, well, between 20 and 30 million gallons annually of effluent from a dairy farm. There were no karst windows in the place where they wanted. Didn't matter, they did it. So we have our work cut out for us to help try to prevent these kind of issues. And I guess the last thing is, what's the state of the litigation? It's been mentioned earlier a little bit. Currently we've spent $18,000 and a little bit in legal fees. You think about it, $18,000 over the last 2.5, 3 years. We're not done. There's at least 12 more depositions that need to be taken. Those are going to be $1,000 or more apiece. There's also an issue. We have members of the section that have been deposed, and it would be quite helpful if those members would move from where they live, to go to Newport Richey, where our attorney has his practice, and do the depositions there. It would save us a lot of money. But a few of them, it says, no, that's inconvenient. I want the attorney to come to me. Well, I'm here to tell you that those people who have decided to make the attorneys come to them have cost the section not $1,000 a deposition, but maybe $3, $4, $5, and as much as $6,000 a deposition. These guys are not our friends. They're supposed to be our friends, but they're not, because they're not supporting our efforts in helping control the cost. I can tell you, and Tex, would you stand up, please? Without the effort of Tex Chalkley and his law firm, who donated their services, we have been bankrupt. Early this year, with legal expenses. Our properties would be subject to whatever we had to do to raise money to do this. And I want to thank Tex publicly. And if you see him in the hallway, I would like for you to see him and walk up to him and tell him thank you, because we wouldn't be here if it really wasn't for his efforts. We have a whole new, basically nearly a new board of directors coming on board this afternoon. We have a new training director, and his challenge is going to be to revitalize our training program, recruit new instructors, and move towards things that can help grow and help reduce complacency within our organization. And hopefully we will set, for a long time, the cave diving section was the standard. We have outstanding instructors. And we will continue to have outstanding instructors. I believe that we need to grow the core. We need more instructors and spread out in different places. Just like the 85,000 flight instructors, there can be, right now we have 40 instructors. Once we had 80, we could still have 80, 100, 200 instructors within the organization. And there can be 200 ways to learn to cave dive. However, at the end result, just like with the FAA, there needs to be one standard that all the students have to be able to achieve so that we have a level playing field. And that will bring about what Brett was talking about with accreditation. It'll give us a standard that we can work to and train to. How you get there leaves room for the different personalities. But in the end result, we have good, safe people out doing good, safe things. So, having said all of that, that's basically what the chairman there has to say on this. And maybe I've saved some time.
Well, thank you, Gene.